Hello people, I'm Jaby Koay, joined by RICARDO, ELLIOTT II, Raw 2.0. We watched Ugly, the Anurag Kashyap film. We're gonna read the IMDb real quick just to give you guys a quick rundown. The case of a missing girl takes us through a journey of human greed and brushes upon the egos and repressed emotions of the characters. That's a very vague description of the movie. It's 2 hours and 8 minutes long. It's a crime, drama, and mystery film. At least those are the genres expressed on IMDb. I'd say those are fairly accurate. There's like 1 or 2 moments of joy, but it's mostly drama. It is a lot of mystery, and it's a lot of crime. We're gonna start out with non-spoilers as best as we can, but that's gonna be very short, and then we'll go into spoilers.
I liked it. At first, it was hard for me because it was so ugly.
In terms of like the characters?
Yeah, like dealing with the emotion you feel afterwards, it's like watching Black Mirror. It's like, oh man, could this get any worse? You don't know what to expect going into it, like, or at least I didn't. When it happens and you're like, it starts really slow. It takes its time and it's building the police characters and other stuff, and then once, you know, you sort of get a sense of what's going on, you have no idea where it's going. You have no idea where this is gonna end up. It's scary, and then, well, yeah, I'll stop. No spoilers.
I really liked it. It was a very powerful and evocative film. It like certainly stirred my emotions effectively the way it wanted to. I thought that it was well shot. I thought that the acting was top notch. It went places that Anurag Kashyap is willing to go, and it went places that for us it would be like Aronofsky or Scorsese, as in they're willing to go to that dark place and really put the camera there, and they're not afraid to show it to you, and that takes a very particular kind of director. I don't want all my films to be that way, but I like that those films exist, and I really appreciate this one a lot. There's a lot to appreciate here, but I don't know if I could watch it more than once, only because it is so dark, only because it does take you to that place, and it really makes you kind of doubt humanity. Let's talk about the acting. This is kind of an ensemble cast. You weren't really sure who the main character was. I wouldn't say there's no specific one main character. This is very much an ensemble piece.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that going into it.
Yeah.
I learned that about an hour into the movie.
It felt like it followed Rahul and Shalini, the main cop. Yeah.
Yeah, Shumik. Rahul Bhatt played Rahul Kapoor, and Ronit Roy played Shumik Bose. I thought those two were awesome. I really believed them, and I really felt for them and their frustration. Well, the frustration from Rahul Kapoor and the anger from Shumik Bose. Like, you could tell he was just harboring something, and you didn't know exactly what it was, but you knew something was there. But he wasn't a one-note guy, because when he spoke to his father-in-law, you could see the shift in his behavior. It wasn't out of character, it was just a shift, and I was like, this guy's really good. They're all really good actors. The only reason to like highlight them is because they're most of the movie there. But Shalini Bose, she was the wife?
Of the main
cop. That's the character's name anyway. She's played by Tejaswini Kalhapur. She was the opening of the film. She sets the stage. She sets the tone. And I thought that she effectively did that. It's easy to overplay this, but they kept it grounded and understated and internalized it. And I really felt like her pain. I didn't know what her pain was about. I don't think that was ever fully expressed in the movie, other than she's struggling. I mean, you see why she's struggling. The fact of the matter is, you see it from the get-go, what's going on. There's a history.
It was a very, very strong opening. I was gonna say something about Shomik, something that I felt like watching it, because I love Rahul's character. Shomik to me felt like a character that Humphrey Bogart would play. He felt like someone like that. He felt like a strong man who, almost like you said, like he's not one note, but you don't often see him break his sort of like facade that he has. And when he does, it like gives you this giant window into like, oh, there's really more in there, you know? It's a really good way to show that like in that one moment. It's not something that he, you know, I thought at first, like, am I supposed to be liking this guy? Like, he seemed like a bad guy, and then as it goes on, like, you sort of feel for him.
Right.
And then, in the end, like, you really feel for him. He really played that very well.
Well, here's the thing. Everybody in this film who is a main character or part of this ensemble piece, most of them, you can see the two sides to it. With Shalini, Shumik, and Rahul, on the one hand, you're like, wow, this person's bad, and then you realize later, oh no, it's like you actually kind of understand where they're coming from. And then with the woman, you're like, dang, she's messed up, but then you see what happened with her and you're like, oh, okay, I kind of get it now. And then with Rahul, you're like, you just feel for the guy, like he made an honest mistake. He left his kid in the car, and then you see the past and you're like, holy shit. Everyone has a good and a bad side. This almost reminds me of Crash in a way, where everybody's got a good and a bad side in that movie. If you guys haven't seen Crash, it's definitely worth checking out. It's a little over the top, but it's definitely worth checking out.
Rocky, his girlfriend, or accomplice. I don't know what you want to call it.
Rocky Malhotra, that's Rahul's girlfriend.
Yeah.
Servine Chawla. That's the thing. Like, everyone played it so real and so well, you could never tell who was going to betray who in the movie. It all came out of nowhere. I love the entire cast. I thought they did a great job here. Next thing, the more obvious thing to talk about is Anurag Kashyap's style. Because he wrote and directed this. This is like really his movie. And he sought to show you something. And I feel like the message is humanity can really be greedy and that can really drive us. And I think that this message is one that is always relevant. Go anywhere in history and this message is relevant because there's always poverty, and poverty drives us towards a certain degree of selfishness, often to a point that's ugly, no pun intended. Everybody in this movie is questionable and their characters are all questionable. That's why it reminds me of Martin Scorsese, because Martin Scorsese films tend to follow a cast of questionable characters. Goodfellas, for instance, everybody's a bad guy in that movie. I really like it a lot. It's not something you see all the time. A film full of everyone who is, it's one redeemable character in the movie, but most of the characters are not redeemable.
Yeah. When it starts out, it's not so hard to watch, and as it goes on, it gets hard to watch.
Yeah.
Like, it's a very powerful thing to watch people take advantage of a situation and sort of get caught up in that and easily lose themselves. Like, that's, like you're saying, that's a very real theme there. That's a really real thing that happens throughout history. It's painful to watch it happen. It's like, don't you understand what you do? There's consequences to these things. It's crazy to see this one thing and everyone's orbiting the situation, and then no one's seeing the bigger picture.
Right,
it's very hard to watch that.
To me, this is analogous to like even our current landscape, our current political landscape with global warming. The girl represents global warming, right? At a certain point, it's too late. And it's like, this thing is right in front of you. Why can't you see it? It's right there. I made it also akin to Game of Thrones, because the whole thing in that series is there are the White Walkers coming and y'all are fighting over, you're squabbling over this bullshit over here. Can you please focus on the bigger picture? At the very end of the film, the female detective says, yeah, like it was the first suspect.
Yeah.
We had the answer all along. We could have saved her. Obviously, like in real life, that wouldn't have happened. That exchange would not have happened.
Yeah.
But it needed to happen for the movie to emphasize the point. Anurag Kashyap very carefully chose where to show the violence in the movie.
Oh, yeah.
And when he did, it cut deep. He chose 2 points. The first guy they chase, he gets run over by the car, and like that was really gruesome. And then they showed the little girl at the end, and I'm like, I commend Anurag Kashyap for going there. It takes a very particular kind of filmmaker to do that. One thing I liked about it was that you can never predict what was happening next. Like, I really didn't know how the movie was going to end because we didn't have one main character to follow. I like where it goes.
It reminded me of how I felt when we were watching a Wednesday. At first, it was hard to follow because you don't know necessarily who you're following, and then there's things you're like, is that important? Who's this film director? Blah, blah, blah. But this one, like, it started a bit confusing, but after, like, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes. It wasn't that hard. Like, it was easy to follow. You don't really understand how they're going to come together, but you just know that it will. And it's interesting that that seems to be a thing that they do a lot in their films, which I appreciate myself. Like, it's really neat to see this balance of characters, you know, how they all relate to each other. It feels a lot more natural to me than, you know, say when it's like following one person and like just everything gets piled on them.
Right.
But I thought it was a natural progression, even though it's not necessarily like what we're used to, you know, the Western thing. Like, it reminds me, movies like this remind me of stuff like Vantage Point.
I saw Vantage Point.
It's sort of like that.
I think this is so much better than Vantage Point. Yeah.
This is much better than Vantage Point. But that sort of thing where it's like, you know, it starts off and it gives you an idea of all these different people and you don't know where it's going to go in the end, and then it all comes together. I really thought it was very well written. That line at the end that we talked about, like, it was, I hesitate to say it was on the nose, but like you said, I really think it needed to be said there.
Yeah.
Especially like on the shot of like Shoemake, like looking at him, like it's a punch in the chest.
Yeah.
It hurts.
This film, in a weird way, kind of reminds me of Mother, in that it's talking about the selfishness of humanity and how we just really get caught up in our own stuff.
I felt like the music in this one really emphasized the intensity and the tension, but it didn't like take over the story and do it for it.
Right.
I think it just worked with it.
I like the music a lot. It was very intense. Right from the get-go, the music was like in your face. It really illustrated the tone of the film because it had this very like hard rock sound to it right at the beginning. So you knew this was going to be a dark movie. It wasn't trying to mislead you at all. It was very direct, like, this is the kind of movie you're getting into. It certainly was consistent with its tone. It said, this is the tone of the film. And then the rest of the film followed that and got progressively darker in that area. And I thought that was a very effective way to go about it. Even the interval music was like that kind of sound. I really liked that. I thought all the music that was present in the movie served the film very well. I'm not a musician, I'm not a composer, but I do like to pay attention to composition in film and how it's used to see if it's effective or not, or distracting. And while there isn't like a theme in the film that I can remember, I still liked how the music was used here because it served the film very well.
It felt very natural, and like I was saying, it didn't overtake. It didn't try and, make something more intense than it really was. Like, it went with the picture, and it let the story do the telling. Sometimes in, not just horror films, but like, thriller films or whatever, the music is what's trying to make you feel something instead of, taking a back seat and letting the thing do, because it's a 50-50 thing.
Right.
And I like this one. Like, I didn't notice it in a negative way, but I noticed it because I was like, wow, I really like this. I like the way that's sort of accenting what's happening right now.
Overall, I really, really like this movie, and I look forward to watching the next Anurag Kashyap film. I think the next one I'm going to watch is No Smoking. I think that's the next one I'm going to watch. I'm not sure. You guys let us know in the comments below which one we should watch next. Again, I love the cinematography here. I love the acting in this. I love the writing. I thought the dialogue was great, even though it's subtitled, and I'm not 100% certain if this is translating perfectly. But I thought that it was very effective. It certainly got through to me. Its message was very clear, and I loved it.
And
so,
the editing.
The editing.
The editing there was a lot of stuff I liked in there.
You did mention that.
Yeah, I noticed a bunch of stuff that was like, oh wow, this is like, there's a lot of style to it, and you don't really get that in a lot of like crime movies for the most part.
That's true. You guys, thanks so much for hanging out with us. Please check out Raw 2.0 on the social media. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Check out our other reactions, reviews, and short films. Let us know which Anurag Kashyap film we should watch next. I'm Jaby Koay. This is
Ricky Elliott.
Peace out.
I forgot to say, give it a 4.5 out of 5.